Hi watch friends, we're back with a really special version of Watch Debate. Come see what we're talking about today. Hi Ripley and Justin.
Good to see you.
Hello.
Amazing to see you. It's the first time for Watch Debate to actually all be together and get to talk about not only one topic but multiple topics. We get the chance to kind of update Watch Debate to step away from just one focused topic to actually have a few different conversations.
I like that.
I know, we get to pick your brain.
So I get to prove Justin wrong multiple times in one video. Yes.
It's already starting. Okay.
Yes. But the most important part about Watch Debate is that you guys weigh in as well. So be sure to pay attention to some of the updated elements. We've got some graphics to cue in where you fall into the conversation. So as always, we like to do a wrist check to kick this off. So let us know what you guys are wearing while watching, but also, what are you wearing, Ripley?
I am wearing a gorgeous older Patek Philippe. This is not mine. This one belongs to you guys, but it is absolutely lovely. And when you see it next to the one on the table, it makes you look forward to the past and some of their older designs.
Yeah,
I
read that was like a 90s, early 2000s. Honestly, it looks so cool. It's giving tuxedo vibes a bit.
Yeah. You could definitely wear this with a tuxedo. I'm a big fan of this one. And relative to like what the brand charges for their new pieces, it seems like a relative bargain.
Yeah.
You know? So
Fun.
good size for my wrist too.
Yeah.
What about you? What are you wearing?
Speaking of 2000s, I've got on a 2000s day-date. I love this one. I've worn this one a few times. Black dial, yellow
Black dial's
gold.
nice,
But
yeah.
the best
Oyster
part,
bracelet.
Yeah, you see this nice little oyster bracelet.
I don't see that
instead
very
of the
often.
president. Yeah. What are you wearing?
Classic daily wear, Explorer, white dial. Love this one.
This has become your persona. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's really grown on me. Not that I've ever disliked it, but the more I wear it, it kind of seems like the more I like it. So
Ooh,
that's
put
always
that
a
on
good
a
one.
billboard.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, well, as I mentioned, Watch Debate is going to start to feature a few different topics. So I guess I'm going to kick this off with our first topical conversation. Watches and Wonders is literally like weeks away. You will be leaving the States to head over to Geneva. So if you guys are curious about what's happening, be sure to follow the Bob's Watches social accounts and Ripley as well. I want to know, what are you guys hoping to see from the 2025 version of Watches and Wonders?
Well, the things I hope to see most have nothing to do with actual watches. I'd just like to see a better bathroom situation and more seating at the little cafes in Pal Expo.
Okay.
As far as watches, I honestly want to see more complications and different expressions of complications. I feel like we've been on a number of years of kind of color being the driving factor for innovation, and we can see some pretty avant-garde designs, but I'd like to see some more innovation in the complication side. Not just a perpetual calendar. How could you redo a perpetual calendar or do it differently or something like that? So yeah, something of that nature.
Spoken like a true watch aficionado.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. First, I'd like to say I love this question better than the what do you predict? Right?
Okay.
Always trying to predict what's coming out, like get ahead of the ball. What do I want to see? I want to see another Milgauss.
Hey.
I want to see it come back. I don't think I will. If it was a prediction video, I wouldn't be able to give that answer because I don't think it's going to be this year. But I would love to, and the Milgauss is going to come back at some point, and I'm anxiously awaiting it. So I would love to see it this year. Outside of that, I think Rolex has been doing more outside of the box stuff, and I want to see more of that. I want to see more surprises, right? We see crazy stuff. We see like the puzzle dial, day date, and just these kind of things that I don't think was on anyone's radar, and I like that. I love being surprised by that stuff. So I hope they kind of double down, and I want to see more surprises.
What if you could, blank slate, don't think about what Rolex would or wouldn't do. What would you like to see for the Milgauss if it were to return?
Please say a tap back to some of its history.
I want to see that original like honeycomb dial.
Yes.
Yeah.
With like a rotating bezel?
That would be nice. That would be nice. The headliner point for me is that honeycomb dial.
Yeah.
I would love to see that come back. That kind of vintage, like inspired without just re-releasing the old version. I think like a modern version of that honeycomb dial Milgauss would be.
Could you see them
really
playing
sweet.
with the size options?
I could. I think the Milgauss is a decent one that, it could err on the smaller side or err on the larger side, and both seem kind of acceptable, right? I mean, not wildly large or small, but I think they do. I think they could go, from 36 to 41 if they're pushing it, right? And size isn't a huge determining factor for me. I like smaller watches and bigger watches. I know some people are a little more specific, but anywhere in that range, I would be happy to see it.
Design plays into it a lot.
Yeah.
Different size watches can wear differently on the wrist based on that design.
Although, if I could only bring back either the Milgauss or Yachtmaster 2, you know
We
what's
know
getting
you're
my.
that's
Oh,
true.
yes, give me the
Team
Yacht 2.
Yachtmaster. That's so
That's
funny.
true.
You know, I kind of lean a little bit towards your desire of what I would hope to see at Watches and Wonders. I don't know why. It does lie in that surprise and delight. I think it's so fun to be surprised and delighted at the same time, because sometimes you can be surprised and not delighted. I want to see some fun. So whether this is like fun in watchmaking or this is fun in the designs, I inherently think obviously the puzzle dial, it was fun, right? Even though it was from the big brand Rolex where it was very unexpected. I really loved Cartier's reverse dial last year. That was a
tons of
surprise
fun, yeah.
moment for me that I also was delighted and found to be really fun.
Yeah.
So I wonder like who will decide to go in that lane this year? You know, there's got to be something, at least we hope.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of wrap it up at that. You know, I think these
I think
are
it's great.
fun hopes.
Yeah.
We want to know what you guys are hopeful for too.
Right.
Before you know it, we'll have another video where we are talking about what actually happened. So let me get to my next point. Our question is, which watch defines luxury today? I know this is a very loaded question. I think for me, there's a couple sub-questions that come in. Is quantity the deciding factor? Like, are you frequently seeing this on wrists, or is it more of that demand aspect? But I would say for you to kind of answer this, think. If you're picturing a watch in your mind when I say luxury watches, instantly share what is that?
I'm gonna say, and again, this is, I feel like this isn't a black and white question, like you said, right? There's several follow-ups, but I'll give you my take on it. If you say what luxury watch, or what watch defines luxury, I would say the Rolex Date 8. I think for, exactly,
Yeah, like,
the one we're talking, that's a perfect example.
Quintessential, yeah.
Right, like solid gold, it's got the crown, it's Rolex. I mean, I think most people, when you say a luxury watch, this is this is the image that pops into their head. And they're not totally wrong, it's luxury. And you know, getting back to the question, there's different levels of luxury, there's different prices, it's, you know, different things to different people. So it's not a complete black and white category, but I think that as a whole, to most people, this would be the watch that defines luxury. To me personally, I would probably think of like some Grand Complications Patek or something like that, right? But again, I'm not really most people. I'm a lot more involved into watches, and you know, it's just different, right? But I think there's a lot of good answers for that question. For me, it's the Rolex President.
Okay, that one plays into availability for sure. Many people can access it. The funds obviously is a piece to it, but I see this for those that want to define luxury on their wrist.
Exactly, and I think it's for a wider audience.
Yeah.
I think some there's watches out there that define luxury that
Universally
are probably not arguably more luxurious than that watch.
Without question.
But it's for a certain kind of person.
Yeah, I think if you get too deep down it, because I think my sentiment's very similar to Justin. Like, you know, the Rolex President, yellow gold, President bracelet, fluted bezel, champagne dial is probably like the most symbolically luxurious watch. There's no way to look at it and not think, oh, it's luxurious. It's a lot of gold. You feel it. Blindfolded, you know it's luxurious. But, you know, within the context of watchmaking, often the most luxurious thing is that thing that requires more explanation. It's either a very simple watch from like a Philippe Dufour type of thing, or it's a super complicated watch and you have to explain, well, yeah, there's 4 different types of calendars and that's the equation of time, and it also does the Hebrew calendar. It's a perpetual calendar. Yeah. All of that. So I think within watchmaking, that what symbolizes luxury is kind of that thing that requires almost deceptively luxurious. Like you see a world timer, you're like, oh, there's a pretty map on the dial. It's like, yeah, well, check this out. You press the button and the thing turns and all of that. But for what is emblematic of luxury across the greater tapestry of humanity, yeah, Rolex President.
Yeah. I'm curious the ladies' perspective on this one.
You do love yellow gold.
I do, and it's funny. I think I have a little bit like not refined. I have taste that maybe that would be my starting point. So from a like luxury standpoint, that would almost be a daily for me. And I know that's insane to say. I think what I noticed a lot, especially as I left the sports world, even though merging the sports world where I was seeing kind of athletes define luxury versus it just being your everyday person, whether it was a watch collector or someone new to it. They were like grand, you know what I mean? There were a lot of diamonds, whether it was on Royal Oaks, or there were a lot of Nautilus that were just, everyone was having that. So I think it was a little bit more brand specific, where like, look, if everyone can acquire Rolex, they were wanting to show kind of that level up a bit. Now that I'm here in the watch world, and I obviously have a lot of experience, yeah, seriously, like this Nautilus, I mean, seriously, not in technically this rose gold, but I was seeing it all the time.
Yeah.
And so you kind of become, I don't know, it's a little different now. From a woman's perspective, I see the weird things a bit more. It's maybe having a collection of things, so it's not definitive to one, but if I answer my own question of, in my mind, what do I see? I see a lot of Daytona. I see a lot of modern Rolex. Not a ton of vintage, but now that I'm in the watch world, I feel like vintage is almost that definitive thing. They're rarer. They're obviously quite the price tag these days. So it's interesting.
And it requires explanation. You look
It
at
does.
this, it's like, oh, this is like an old stainless steel watch, and it's
How
like, yeah,
much?
it costs a lot more than that solid gold
Right.
one.
Right.
And again, it goes back to like it requires a bit more explanation.
Yes.
And then also navigating it. You know, if you have a lot of money, in theory, you could go buy something new that's still in production.
Yes.
Whereas if you're hunting for something that hasn't been made for half a century, now it's a whole different type of acquisition
Yes.
experience. You have to know the industry, know who to talk to, know where to get one, how to get a genuine one, not get
Yes.
duped, all of that. So I
Right.
think it kind of alludes to that other purchase price that
Sure.
goes into
Yep.
it as
Yeah.
well.
It's not just a walk
I
in and
think
pay.
that's a good element to define luxury a bit, is your resources now are a little bit different than maybe the standard person's resources, right?
Yeah.
You have to know the person, you have to be able to have a person know a person, right? And then on top of that, as a collector, you want those things that you're not seeing everyone else in, right? Maybe you have your status Nautilus, but then what? You know,
Right.
is it MD&F? Is it a crazy Jacob & Co?
Yeah.
Like, we could go a lot of different things. As a woman, I don't think that those will ever be in my collection, but look, never say never.
Well, and you also see it though on the lower side, like let's say people aren't spending tens of thousands of dollars, they might go for a more obscure Oris model over like the obvious choice of a entry level Omega or something, and it could be a very similar price point, but it's like the non-obvious choice that kind of alludes to, oh yeah, but I had to get that one that was a limited edition for this, and like it was a hard thing to get, but I knew a guy type of thing. So it's like, it's not necessarily tethered to budget, but there's that thing of, the luxury of being able to get this thing that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get.
True.
Right, that comes out quite a bit, right? When it's the rare watch, like one of your points or questions was availability. A lot of them, especially when it's a new release. At the time, this was, for a short time, but it was that white dial.
Yeah.
When did you get that? How did you get that? No one has it yet. And there's so many watches that goes on, and it continues, right? Like it'll be another watch that maybe next year or the year after that's just like the hard one. No one can get it. It's for whatever reason it's blown up, and it's very luxury to be able to have that piece that no one can get.
Yeah.
And that's aside from price. I mean, there's watches in the $10,000 and the $100,000 and up, and so it's
I
just
think that
availability.
excitement about the hunt is kind of what plays into
Yeah,
it.
hype and luxury can often be used synonymously, and to be able to afford and acquire the things that have a ton of hype, that is in a sense luxury. But I wouldn't necessarily say like the hype item, like 5711 in steel, is necessarily the same type of like long-term emblematic blue chip luxury as
Right.
like the President, even though the price is very comparable as far as a retail level.
Yeah.
Nice. I like this conversation.
This is a good one to ask our audience, I
Yes.
think, right? Like, I'm really curious what you guys think. If
sure
Emily
there'll be
asks
a
you the
variety
same
of
question,
answers.
Yeah, and
what
I
watch
don't
do you
think-
think of? Leave a comment.
Yeah, and I don't think there is a correct one,
No.
because it
No,
comes down to
it's
like
different
how
for
you're
everyone.
looking at
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
It's more discussion, I guess I should say, but the debate is open, and that's the
Sure,
fun part of these
yeah.
questions.
Although there probably are some wrong answers.
I'm sure there are. Leave us one.
Please. So we're clearly into luxury watches. We're assuming you guys are too. If you're into luxury watches, is there a space in your collection for a smartwatch? We're in the age of smartwatches.
Just gonna go ahead and
Yes, you are. All right. So
yeah.
double the fun in this
Double the
stance,
fun,
but
yeah.
in the world of in the world of smartwatches, is there still room for luxury watches?
More than ever.
Okay.
Like, think about it this way. If you don't actually need to have this because this does everything
Everything and then some.
in what for a few $100s, in what purpose does this have? Mega luxury. It only tells you the time, and it
Right.
costs thousands.
Yeah.
So, like, if anything, you know, I think with the democratization of like the most functional thing, I mean, this you go underwater and it turns into a depth gauge. You know, you
Right.
can't. What's the purpose of this? It's a three-handed dive watch. Well, it's a much nicer three-handed dive watch.
Yeah.
And so that gets into the luxury of it. I think with the proliferation of smartwatches, there's arguably more of a purpose for luxury watches. Someone might wear a smartwatch on their wrist the bulk of their day, but when they go out to dinner or they're in the office or they're getting dressed up for whatever, it makes it all the more special because they're putting it on, and instead of it just being like, it's this thing I wear every day and then take off when I wash my hands, it's like oh yeah, this is good. I'm putting it on and I'm taking off this uninspiring micro iPhone, you know?
I agree on both sides of that coin. The smartwatch is, I mean, I guess you could say it's like the ultimate tool watch, right? I mean, that's kind of all it is. There's not really any aesthetics in it. It doesn't really feel good to put on a smartwatch. It just does so much for you that it's, it has extreme function. And on the other hand, like you said, it's a three-handed dive watch. It's the dress Patek that, just tells me the time. It's not doing near the amount of things for me that the smartwatch is, but I like it and it feels good and it makes me feel good to wear it. And there's just something else about it that's more than the functionality.
Well,
Yeah.
and it speaks to like the lasting nature of it. I view my smartwatches as basically disposable items in my life, whether it's a Garmin or an Apple Watch. I use them for however many years they last. But like, I'm well aware that this in 10 years is not going to be still playing a role in my life. And part of what makes me so okay with not having any type of attachment to this other thing on my wrist every day is the fact that I have these very nice things in my life that are going to hopefully outlive me. Otherwise, God knows what I've done with them at the end of my life.
Right.
But these things that will last, you can always get a Rolex repaired and pass it on, or it's good. It's just tells you the time or maybe the date. It's still going to be useful. It's not like going to be outdated due to an update.
Yeah.
And so I'm so okay having no relationship with a smartwatch because I have these other ones in my life that I know, well, that's where I'm putting my interest and value. This is just a tool in the same way that like you might have a really nice heirloom knife that was your grandfather's, and then you've got that thing in the kitchen that you use to go cut the box open with.
That's kind of where I fall on this. It's interesting. You noted on maybe the presence that it gave you in that moment. Like, yes, the ease of the everyday watch, like a smartwatch, where it's doing a lot for you. But in those special moments where you want to kind of have that presence and be a part of the moment, it does sort of ground you in whatever you're doing. And you note that it transcends time, okay? I think the best thing in watches lately has been a lot of the stories that either the wearer creates with that watch and then it kind of roots into it, but then also when you are purchasing a watch that already has a bit of like provenance or
like
something.
the case back engraving on that old Daytona. Could you imagine
I
that
love
on the
case
back
back
of like an
engravings.
Apple Watch?
Right.
Absolutely
Wow.
not.
Yeah.
That's a very sentimental
To be fair,
message.
Be like
to
an
read
engraving
it,
on your
it says,
Walkman.
To Doug on our 13th anniversary, and it says the date from 1987. Love, Linda. That's so sweet. I love those.
That's
I
perfect.
hope you never
Linda,
take
that's a
those away.
fantastic gift.
Yeah.
Doug,
That's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head. There's a quote I read a long time ago. You've probably heard it. It said something like, your watch doesn't just tell time, it tells a story. And that's really what it is. This watch is more than just a watch, right? Like you said, it's something you can pass down, something you keep. There might be sentimental value. It's a gift. It's part of fashion. For me, when I originally got into watches, it was like, watches are kind of like the only jewelry for men, really. And I mean, they will. Like some guys can pull off rings and chain and all that. I'm not one of them, but that's the one like stylistic jewelry that's really open for men. So it's part of style, not just time,
Yeah.
So the watch is really more than just a watch. And sometimes a smartwatch just won't do. I saw a post on social a while ago and it really resonated with me. And it was like, please stop wearing your Apple Watch with your tuxedo.
Okay,
and
listen,
I was like,
it makes me laugh because that is where this question came from. It was like, when someone asks you, it was a meme. It was like when someone asks me like what my biggest fear is, I say spiders because I can't say wearing a smartwatch to a wedding.
And exactly, you can't. I mean, that's the style part, right? Like I want that. Ripley, what you have on your wrist right now, that's what I want. That is what I want.
Yes.
With my tuxedo,
Put this
one is
down,
right and one
not
is
this
wrong.
one. That is right.
Yeah, and you know what's the worst though? When you try to make a mashup of the two and you put like a crocodile strap on this, it's like, no, just
or you put the Patek screen face on your Apple Watch and
I could turn it into a Pepsi GMT.
Right?
What
Yeah.
do you think?
So it sounds like we're kind of all a bit in agreement that, like, listen, the smartwatch has its purpose, okay? Like, it clearly is very smart. The technology continues to advance, and there is the ease of wearing it because it does so much, but it does not take away from all that luxury watches do bring. All right, last question for you guys. Thanks for the good conversation. I would say this is about brand loyalty. So when it comes to collecting, do you stick to one brand or do you collect across the board?
That's not my wife. I don't need to be loyal to it. I think we have our preferences. Like, I think it's natural for me to have my preferences. For example, I prefer the Submariner to the Seamaster. I prefer the Speedmaster to the Daytona. But like, I'm not going to not buy a Daytona because I am just too loyal to the Speedmaster. Like, I think preferences are one thing, but I don't think you need to define yourself by the watches you own. You can pursue things in the collection, be like, oh, I like to collect Rolex Submariners, but like that should not ever stop you from buying a Seamaster if you like it.
I agree. Everyone has a degree of brand loyalty, right? And part of that is loyalty, and part of that is, like you said, it's what resonates with you, right? Like you preference it. If you're into chronographs and or you really love the Speedmaster, it's like you will likely have a Moonwatch and a Speedmaster Reduced. And
not loyal to caffeine, I just like it.
Right. So yeah, I think everyone has a little bit of brand loyalty. Some people, I know people who have extreme brand loyalty. They're like, I am an Omega collector.
Yes.
I'm not a watch collector. I am an Omega collector.
We all know a few of those.
And that's extreme, and that's cool. I like that. It's not really
It's
for
a
me,
niche.
but I
they
respect it.
also own a couple other watches that aren't Omegas, and I think that's the part of it where it's like they identify as an Omega collector. They have a massive affinity for the brand, but like it's not so tribal to the point where they will stop themselves from enjoying another watch.
Right.
They might have 100 to 1 Omega, but
So let me ask the question: what would make someone be loyal to one brand? Do you think you would have to have like been a watchmaker for that brand?
maybe Terry Stern only buys Patek these days.
That's a good question. For me, I do have some brand loyalty.
What is your preference?
It's more about the actual company than the watch.
Okay, so does
I
history play
have
into
more
this?
brand loyalty to the companies I like working with. I feel like take care of me. Things like that will push me more brand loyalty towards that company,
So service
but
and
not
whatnot.
necessarily exactly service. And if I've had a good experience with them, if I had good experience at their ADs, if I like their salesmen, if I like working with them when I have a problem, if they come through for you, and you know what I mean.
a good
All
point.
those things. Those are the things that create brand loyalty for me personally, rather than their design language and their aesthetic and whatever. I would say I do have some brand loyalty, but yeah, it's more for the brand and how they operate.
That makes sense. I definitely think preference is key here, and as a collector, I feel like the sentiment is reigns similar across all of us. Collect what you want. Like it shouldn't be definitive to like, oh, I only love this brand or I only like what they've defined. Like brands are changing so much, especially ones that have had quite the history. I mean, their modern versus their, first iterations are completely different. And as they change, watchmakers and visions, as CEOs come and go, it updates, whether for the good or the bad, it is changing. And so I like to see variety, but it is fun to see how people niche and where their preferences lie. Someone that's been collecting tanks for years. It's fun to see that collection through the sorts, but I think you said, Ripley, that they're not collecting some other watches from other brands.
Well, and then honestly, when you actually start talking to the brand owners and the families and the sons and daughters of these people who are just generational operations, yes, they might love the brand that they work for or partially own, but they also own other watches. And I think, you know, that's the end of it. You know, and the other thing is, like, you might have a very strong sentimental attachment to brand. It was the watch your dad wore or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you like watches, it's like only limiting yourself to one type of burger stand.
Variety
if you
is
just
the
like
spice of
burgers, you're
life.
still gonna eat a burger from other places.
Yeah.
And it's nice with watches, we can do that because you can have hundreds, thousands of watches, right? Like, take cars as another example. Like, I would love to have a million different brands of cars. I don't have the luxury of having a hangar or space to have all those, so limited. I mean, I can fit, you know, a very finite amount of cars at where I live, and watches, I have the luxury of having one of these and one of those and three of those and, you know, whatever I want.
Could you imagine leaving a couple cars on your bedside table at night?
Right? Yeah.
No worries, I'll grab that one on Thursday.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. Well, I have really enjoyed getting to cover a few topics with you guys
These were
today,
fun.
especially for coming back and mixing things up for the sake of a new year. And for you guys, we hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to weigh in on our topics. Be sure to let us know maybe what topics you guys would like us to speak about now that we're covering a variety of things. We'd love to always take into account what you guys would like us to discuss. Even if it's personal, it's fun.
Yeah.
Watch collecting is unique to each individual, but at a point it's fun to connect on a community level. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for joining us. We will be back again soon. Take care.